Good afternoon. My name is Jason Trask. I'm a Strategic Communication Associate with the Justice Information Resource Network, and I'd like to welcome you to our roundtable on collaboration between SAC and SAAs to support the Deaths in Custody Reporting Act. This roundtable will discuss the collaboration between the SAAs and the SACs working on data collection for DCRA reporting. It will highlight the impact of partnerships on enhancing the quality of DCRA data collection and exploring strategies for improving SAC-SAA collaborations in other states. In addition, this session will also discuss the results of a focus group that we recently held to investigate the common DCRA data collection challenges. Today, we are joined by discussants from Idaho, Kentucky, and Maryland. Representing Idaho, we have Thomas Strauss, Julie Brotzman, and Kara Thompson. Representing Kentucky, we have Joe Sullivan and Drew Ritzel. And finally, representing Maryland, we have Jeffrey Zuback. Serving as our moderator today is Doug Spence, a senior research fellow at the Justice Information Resource Network. And we are also joined by our colleague here, Alexa Singer, who is a research associate and who also leads the efforts to support DCRA reporting and she also helped conduct these focus groups. We'd also like to acknowledge the support of the Bureau of Justice Statistics, which makes this event possible. And with that, I will turn it over to Doug.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Welcome everyone to our roundtable today. As Jason mentioned, we kind of have two goals today. First, talking about the SAC-SAA relationships in regard to DCRA reporting, and then in the second section, previewing some of the results of the focus groups that were conducted and getting more into the details of the actual reporting challenges and strategies and methods for overcoming those. Now, I'm assuming most folks on the call today have some familiarity with DCRA and are involved in reporting, but in case you aren't, this is the Death in Custody Reporting Act. So this is a piece of legislation that requires all states to submit quarterly data on deaths that occur for people that are in custody. So that can be either incarcerated in prison or jails, or in the state of arrest, or being detained or being transported. So as you can imagine, this is something that can create some significant challenges as far as getting this data together from different places, sometimes getting information that may not be collected. And so this is an area where, there needs to be a strong relationship between the SAAs that are responsible for reporting this information, and in many cases, the statistical analysis centers that are involved in getting that data together. So what we've done today is brought together folks from 3 states that are all strong performers in regards to their DCRA reporting, to talk first a bit about this relationship and the sort of the process that they have in place in their state. And then we'll get into the results from those focus groups and how they may relate, and move into our first questions that deal with the SAC and SAA relationships. I wanted to just go around and ask the folks from each state to just talk a bit about your state SAC and SAA relationship in regard to DCRA reporting. So what does this process look like? How are your organizations related to each other organizationally? Who does what in the process? And sort of what does the status quo look like today? And I don't know if we want to just kind of go alphabetically through the states and maybe start with the folks from Idaho, if anyone wants to kind of provide some background on what things look like in Idaho.
Sure, Doug, I'll take it for our state. For everyone who doesn't know me, I'm Thomas. I'm the director of the Idaho Statistical Analysis Center. And I guess to answer the question in a general sense, depending on how you look at it, the SAC is actually part of the SAA structurally here in Idaho. I know in a lot of states, the SAC and the SAA might reside in the same agency, but they're sort of different departments or different arms of that agency. Actually, Kara, who is on the line today, is the manager of the pass-through grants and research department, which is under the Idaho State Police, and is the SAA for JAG and a handful of other programs. Kara is my direct supervisor, and so that's why I say structurally we kind of sit inside the SAA in what I think is kind of a little bit of a unique structural setup. And so for us, with that setup in mind, the collaboration is kind of predictably pretty seamless. I mean, Kara brought this to us in 2019 and was like, hey, we need to collect this data. We've got you guys in-house. Can you help us do this? And we kind of took it from there. Do you want me to get into specifics, Doug, at this point, or do you want me to pass it off to Kentucky?
It's up to you if you have things that you'd like to emphasize, or if you'd like to hold those for later on, because we will get into some of the more detailed questions later on. But
okay, sure. Yeah, then I guess I'll just say for now that, as the SAC director being part of the SAA, my office basically coordinates all of the DCRA related activities, and so we collect all of that data and we clean it up into a format that is usable to be uploaded into the PMT's bulk upload tool. And I'll leave it there for now, I guess, and we can come back to more specifics later. So I will pass it off to Kentucky to share their experience.
Hi, I'll take this for Kentucky. My name is Joseph O'Sullivan. I'm a federal program specialist here in the Criminal Justice Statistical Analysis Center in the Kentucky Justice and Public Safety Cabinet. The SAA for BRN-JAG is the Secretary of the Justice and Public Safety Cabinet, and we are located within that cabinet. CJ-SAC administers BRN-JAG, and we also do the DCRA reporting. So it sounds similar to what was just said. We're kind of in a dual role. BRN-JAG and DCRA reporting got moved into CJ-SAC last summer from the Grants Management Division. So our dual role as both the SAA and the SAC is still being defined, but it does give us a lot of advantages because the agencies that we would be collaborating with and working with on improving DCRA reporting are all located within the same cabinet, and that would be the Department of Corrections, Kentucky State Police, the Office of the Medical Examiner. So we're very fortunate in that regard. We are also very fortunate that in Kentucky, we do have statutes that govern in custody death reporting, at least on the correctional side. So we are lucky that we do have a very good working relationship with our Department of Corrections, and they provide data to us on inmate deaths, both from state institutions, the Department of Juvenile Justice, and also all of the local jails. I think there's 80 or 82 local jails in the state are also required to report in custody deaths to the Department of Corrections. So that's the general reporting environment that we have here.
thank you, Joe. I don't know, Jeffrey, if you want to talk a bit about the process and relationship in Maryland, or
Yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jeff Zuback. I'm the Maryland SAC director. Been with the SAC for about 14 years or so. We are also similar to Idaho. We are co-located within the state administering agency, so we have a really good partnership. Unfortunately, we couldn't have anybody from that side join today because they're having an all staff grants meeting today. So that pretty much ties up all of the SAAs, but we have a federal manager that oversees kind of the BJAG component, and he's really the one that really works hand in hand with me. We do all of the data collection, identifying the cases, and I can talk more about our data collection process as we get a little further into this discussion, but he is always sending reminders to us. He always submits the data into the PMT for us, and then is also contacting us whenever there's adjustments that need to be made, or we might have missed a case here or there, or things like that. He's always on top of that. But just to give a little bit of perspective without getting too far into the weeds, Maryland, as we have a separate state reporting bill called Deaths Involving a Law Enforcement Officer, it's not a 100% apples to apples comparison to the federal team. There are some cases that we collect under the state that do not meet the federal definition. And then for that program, we don't collect any corrections-based data. So that's only on the federal side, but that's been a law going back to 2013. So we've had roughly, 11 or 12 years to really kind of refine our approach over time, and we've had a lot of success with it. So I'm really excited to kind of share some of those experiences as we delve further into the conversation.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And thanks, everyone. I think, we're seeing some kind of common themes here, at least in terms of your states, of sort of how the process is set up, where the SAC is originally sort of nested within the SAA or organizationally kind of part of the same larger agency. Jeffrey, you did mention that you've made some changes over time, how this process has evolved or how this relationship has evolved. So it kind of sounds like with each of you, this is sort of the situation as it was set up when you began DCRA reporting. So it wasn't inherited from some prior arrangement. But I am curious if you could speak about if there have been any kind of major changes to the way you've done things that have improved, the reporting process. And really,
DCRA,
anyone, but Jeffrey, if you.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Doug, you were cutting out a little bit. I thought you were finished and then I cut you off. I apologize.
Oh, sorry.
You were kind of like going in and out. So
I was finishing. Okay. Sorry about that. Yes, just saying if there were changes that had happened over time, and Jeffrey, I think you were starting to answer. So if you want to continue, that's fine.
Yeah. The DCRA definitely changed our approach only because the state bill is done annually. DCRA, since it's quarterly, we have to do a lot more upkeep on making sure that we're collecting data. So that did refine our approach. We kind of used a system. We have a good working relationship. We've had it for a long time with our medical examiner. So that's great. They kind of send us a batch monthly spreadsheets on basically any death that they determine is law enforcement or corrections related. We still have to verify those, but that at least gets us the foot in the door. We have some cases. We also have the Attorney General's office now also investigates any police involved shootings. So that will capture probably 25 to 30% of our incidents that we use that as a check. We use a Google alert system for years where we actually had some parameters set up where we could identify certain keywords that would show up in articles. The problem with that is it was very cumbersome. We may get 1% of all articles that might actually be relevant to a case in Maryland. And then the approach that we've really ironed out over the last year is we've started to embed Qualtrics into our state and our federal reporting. The benefit of Qualtrics is that we can do automated, they call them workflows. So basically on January 1st, April 1st, July 1st, and October 1st, we send out automated notifications to all of our jails and law enforcement agencies that they're required to submit this data under the federal program. So we've been using that approach for probably the last 6 months. So that is really, I think, really upped our participation rate. Of course, we get a lot of agencies that just have nothing to report. So we may get a lot of responses, but 75% of them are, we've had 0 incidents this last quarter, but we felt like that's really kind of improved the response rate. There's still a lot of validation. As we all know, this is not just quantitative data. We really have to do some qualitative analysis to determine if it meets the definitions, but we feel like that's really gotten our response rate up.
Great. Thank you, Jeffrey. Do other folks have things to add or things that have changed in your state as far as the process for DCRA reporting or the relationship with the SAA?
Well, I can speak a little bit in Kentucky. Our biggest challenge really has been since 2022, 2023, there had not been really a formal system for DCRA reporting set up because the responsibility was within the grant management division. And like a lot of other state agencies, the combination of COVID and then the staff turnover and retirements, there was really no single person kind of assigned to do this. So everything was really done on kind of an ad hoc basis. I came into the cabinet in the fall of 2022 and got assigned to work on JAG and DCRA. And so most of the work that we've done has really been trying to put processes in place that will work if, say, I'm not here. So the reporting agencies, which would be Department of Corrections, now has, a central email that they can report to. The reporting is much clearer. They know who to contact. And we're now in the process of trying to put more formal processes in place and identifying the gaps that we have. While we have very good correctional reporting, we don't have any reporting for arrest-related deaths. So right now we're engaging in some informal conversations with our state police who investigate officer-involved shootings, because that will likely be a very good source for us instead of doing the open source searches like Marilyn described, or relying on like the Fatal Force database or any of those online sources. And while our statutes require that a coroner perform a post-mortem exam, there's nothing that requires those results to be reported to anyone. So we're firming up those processes as well. So a lot of changes really within the last year. And now that this reporting is located in the SAC, it gives us a lot more opportunity to actually work on the data issues, to work on the reporting, and really make it a lot more efficient, hopefully. I'm hoping if we have a session like this next year, we'll have even better things to report than we do now.
Right. And then here in Idaho, unlike the other two states that are speaking to this today, we do not have any state statutes that govern either deaths in custody reporting or investigations. So in 2019, we had to build this process entirely from scratch, basically. And so we leveraged some other relationships that we had at the state level. My office historically has always worked well with our state UCR program, as well as our departments of correction and juvenile corrections. And so we leverage those contacts pretty heavily to at least get a foot in the door with all of the reporting agencies around the state and start to build a contact list within each agency who's going to be the point of contact for that agency. We've got about 120 of them around the state that qualify as reporting agencies for DCRA purposes. And so we just kind of went from there, and we took the old, what was it called? The Mortality and Correctional Institutions forms that BJS used to use, and we kind of adapted those. And for the last 5 years, we've been, once a quarter sending out an email to our contact list of our points of contact that we've built up over time. And we've said, hey, it's that time of the quarter. Please get your reports in, and we'll send them a blank PDF form for them to fill out and then send back to us. Similar to what Jeff was describing, though, this year we're working on taking that process online. Our parent agency, the Idaho State Police, is building an internal, well, it's sort of internal. It's kind of a hybrid. It's a secured environment where the agency can collect all sorts of forms. So we're leveraging that platform that they're building, and DCRA reporting is going to be integrated into that alongside forms for witnesses to traffic accidents to submit witness reports and some of those things. So we're leveraging the work that our IT people are already doing to stand that up. And we've asked them to put DCRA reporting right in there alongside that. And we hope to have that go live later this year. And that's encouraging to hear that Jeff has had some success in improving their participation rates by taking it online and using Qualtrics, because that's exactly what we're hoping to do too. For the last year or two, our participation rate has hovered in the 50 to 60% range. And so we are also doing some open source searching of media articles and of local media, and using those online databases like Washington Post and mapping police violence to figure out if we've missed anything. But yeah, so that's encouraging to hear that taking that process online has increased participation rates. That's what we're hoping to see here too later this year.
Thank you, everyone. I'm hearing a lot that resonates with what we heard in the focus groups, which would be interesting to kind of discuss. We're seeing a lot of similar issues. As far as kind of continuing theme of, changes in the general trajectory of what the process looks like in your state. Just curious if you could talk a little bit about sort of where you think the challenges and opportunities are at this point. So what are the potential challenges for your work on DCRA and your relationship with the SAAs for this area of reporting moving forward?
Who should tackle that first?
I'll take a stab at it. For right now, for us, the greatest challenge that we have is kind of identifying who has access to what data and who's in a position of authority to share that data with another agency, and convincing them of the value of sharing that data. Some of this is the challenge, really, I think, with working with any government agency, is kind of addressing the inertia of, well, this is how things have always been done. A lot of it has really involved kind of educating the other agencies about DCRA. Even the people who are reporting to us, say from the Department of Corrections, they know that they have to report these deaths to us, but they don't really know what the basis of that is. So educating them, as we work with our law enforcement partners at Kentucky State Police, letting them know that what we're asking for with some of these arrest-related deaths is we don't want any information that's going to impact any pending investigation or pending litigation. We're just looking for demographic information to kind of fill in the boxes for what we're required to report. So a lot of what we're doing is really right now relationship building, I guess, for lack of a better way of describing it. So those are I think the main challenges that we're facing right now.
I guess I can chime in next. I think that the biggest, well, there's a couple of challenges. I think the biggest one for us is we had a great process in place for the state reporting. Basically, it took us we knew we had annual data to look at. So sometime around March, April range is when we started collecting everything. Now with the federal definition, it's quarterly. So it's much more difficult to keep on top of collecting all the data. We always know each quarter that there's always going to be cases that we're missing. And then we wait till the end of the year when we do our state, then we kind of mirror the two up, but it's just always hard keeping up with the quarterly submissions, tracking everything. And then for us, having the state bill in effect has been great in the sense that we had a process in place, but it also does cause confusion among the law enforcement agencies because they don't always know what fits under which bill, which requirements. So one thing that we've done in the last, I guess, 3 or 4 months is, we have a data dashboard. We used to have a separate federal dashboard and a separate state dashboard. We now have one page for federal, one state, one for state. And then we have a landing page that kind of has a Venn diagram that kind of shows what falls under the federal definition and the state definition and where the overlap is. So I think that that's been some confusion. I think that we're kind of ironing that out now, but now we're seeing great participation on the federal side, but then they're not also submitting information on the state side. So it's just been kind of that communication thing. And then I'll echo what Joe was saying. We try to tell the agencies, they do have to include a brief description of the incident, but we tell them this data is subject to PIA requests. You don't want to, if you please do not, submit, identifying officer names, badge numbers, things like that. Like they could look up the decedent's information. Most of that's going to be public record. If it's certainly a serious case, it's going to get media coverage, but we routinely have to try to redact and black out or ask agencies if they really want this information made public. So that's just kind of an extra layer of scrutiny that we have to take in the data, which isn't a big deal for a couple cases, but when you multiply that by however many agencies are submitting the data, that can get very cumbersome very quick.
Yeah, I would say that the challenges in Idaho are similar to what Jeff and Joe have already talked about. And I think it does. I think a lot of it comes back to just educating agencies around, what is DCRA, what needs to be reported, what is not reportable in some cases, and then exactly what type of information we're looking for, especially as it pertains to that brief circumstances the box, I guess, that BJA wants people to fill in. And on that one specifically, this is an area that we're trying to make an improvement in our online version of this form that we're building. Rather than just kind of copy and paste the language over from either what BJA or the federal statute says needs to be included in there, we've decided to break that section out into 4 very specific questions. One being, why was the decedent either in custody or being pursued? Another one would be, if it was a pursuit, was there a weapon present? A third one being, what specific actions did officers take during the incident? And making all of those things mandatory as well. Those are not going to be optional fields in our form. And then we'll take the answers to those individual questions and then kind of aggregate all that together. And that's our brief circumstances. Because what we found is that we've gotten a whole range of things, from people leaving it blank and we have to follow up with them, to giving us maybe 1 or 2 sentences that gives us a cause of death, but doesn't really get at some of those other questions that BJA is trying to answer, all the way to, we've had a couple instances where people quoted verbatim an autopsy report, which we don't want that either. That's too far the other direction, as Jeffrey was just talking about. And so that's something that we're trying to work on with this next kind of the phase of our DCRA program is really trying to make sure that people understand what we're asking for and continue that education piece. And I think that plays into our response rates too. Like I said earlier, we have roughly 50 to 60% participation rate in Idaho. And we don't think that's leading us to miss very many reportable incidents. There's maybe one over the last 2 or 3 years I can think of that went unidentified for a while before it was brought to our attention. And then we rectified that one and got it submitted a year or a year and a half after the fact or something like that. But for those agencies that are not reporting, that are not sending in 0 reports when we ask them for them, there's an education component there too, to reach out to those agencies, make contact with them, help them understand why that even submitting a 0 report is important. And so, I think just generally continuing to educate the local agencies, especially law enforcement, around what we're doing and why it's important is going to be an ongoing thing for us as well.
Thompson, everyone. Our last question for this section is just asking if you have any suggestions for other states that are either getting involved in DCRA reporting for the first time, or that are looking to connect with their SAC with their SAA and sort of and get them involved in a way similar to what's going on in your states. So any thoughts on suggestions or tips to kind of hit the ground running, or to build a strong relationship between the SAC and the SAA?
Doug, I think your microphone's a little, I don't know if it's covered, but I think I got most of that. So in case anyone on the panel didn't quite catch the question, basically just suggestions for other states on who might be interested in having some sort of SAC SAA collaboration if they don't already. I think that's what I heard you ask.
Yeah, that is the gist. Hopefully everyone can.
Okay.
Well, I can.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Thomas.
Oh,
Sorry.
thanks. I was going to say I can jump in with a really easy thing off the bat, which is the funding was important for, and especially BJA allowing some JAG funding to be set aside starting this year for specifically for DCRA data collection and reporting. For the first 5 years that we have been doing this, as one of the benefits of being co-located with our SAA is that we have always set aside a portion of our state's JAG funding to go to the SAC for data collection and analysis and research activities. And so for the first 5 years, we just kind of cut into that budget a little bit and said, all right, we're going to throw DCRA in there with everything else that the SAA is already paying us to do. Now that we're able to specifically set aside DCRA funding through JAG to pay for some of these activities, that's a huge deal for us. And so if that's something that the SAA is able to do, is to funnel even just a little bit. I think our DCRA set aside that we did for this year was in the neighborhood of $10,000 for the year. So it doesn't take a huge amount of money sometimes. If the SAA can spare even a little bit to help cover the costs of doing some of these activities, that would go a long way.
Thank you,
Yeah, I don't
Thomas.
know if, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I was wondering if any of the SAA folks wanted to weigh in, or make sure, Kara and Julia, if you have anything you want to add, or make sure everybody gets a chance to kind of weigh in on the topic. Or any other thoughts on sort of the SAC SAA relationships in relation to DCRA in general? Any last comments or thoughts before we kind of move on to the next section?
Be too redundant to Thomas's point, but money talks, and I think that goes from using funding in-house to do data collection, but also using funding as a way to get the agencies to report the information. So, building that collaboration with the SAAs there, I think can really help ensure maybe, we talk about doing things electronically, but that's only one piece of it. If there's a financial condition tied to it, then that might also help this subrecipients respond in a more timely manner.
Thank you. Yeah, this has been very helpful. I think, we're seeing some common themes kind of emerge in the discussion for types of issues that the folks are dealing with, and lots of interesting ideas for ways of addressing those. So I think that serves as a pretty good segue to kind of the second part of the roundtable today, which is talking a bit about reporting challenges and solutions for dealing with them. And in particular, kind of building off of some work that the JIRN has done investigating this over the past year, which I'll talk briefly about, just to kind of give everybody a sense of what some of the findings of this have been, and we can discuss those further. But to just catch everybody up, over the past year, JIRN has been collecting information about some of these challenges from two main sources, one being the state implementation plans that states submit as part of their JAG applications, which include a section where they do talk about some of the challenges for data collection that we're seeing. So we've been compiling that information and reviewing it. There are also a set of focus groups that were conducted in early of 2024 with members from SAAs in 16 states to dig into some of these issues and talk about kind of what the biggest challenges are from their perspective. And in terms of the findings, we don't have time here to go into everything. So I'll mention that, at the end of this, we'll provide a link to pages where we'll have more information, and you can get a sort of more detailed report of the findings of the focus groups in particular. But I do want to touch on kind of the highlights or the themes from this work, because, as I think you could see, it ties in quite well with what we've been talking about today. So in general, there are four main themes to what was found in the review of the implementation plans and in the focus groups in terms of challenges. The first set of challenges relate to the reporting itself, and these fell into three general buckets. One being challenges with the reporting system, related to functionality, or having issues with duplicate cases, or finding it difficult to make corrections or change things. So dealing with the PMT or project management tool system itself that the data is used to submit the data. There are also challenges in aggregating the data, so bringing together data from lots of different reporting agencies that may collect information in different ways, often in different forms or Excel sheets, finding ways to reconcile those when they disagree in terms of the information that they're providing, getting local reporting agencies to submit. And then, as we saw with a couple of states today, challenges related to having competing or complementary state level legislation for DCRA reporting that may create its own requirements that the folks obviously need to follow, but that may not be the same as what they're getting from the federal requirements coming out of DCRA. A second area where we see kind of a common theme in terms of the findings for reporting challenges relates to updating records, so changing records over time. So one thing that we saw a number of states mentioning was that they had challenges where there would be situations where the death was under investigation, and so not all information was available until that was concluded, but it wasn't always easy to get that information, or it required a lot of follow-up to check back up with the arresting agency or whoever it was that was doing the investigation to get that information. So those things create challenges in terms of getting that information, fully populated and up to date. A third bucket that participants reported there being challenges were related to law enforcement data in particular. So finding that police departments are sometimes reluctant to share information about deaths because they perceive that they might be held responsible, or that there were pending investigations that they didn't want to impact or disrupt, or definitional disputes about what types of deaths are reportable or should be reported. So this was another area where we saw a number of responses. And then finally, kind of the fourth bucket that we see, or the fourth theme that we see emerging from the focus groups and this other data review, are concerns about SAAs either feeling that they don't have the credibility with reporting agencies, or they have communication challenges with reporting agencies or other entities within their states, either because there's no incentive for reporting agencies to report to them, or they're seen as being sort of a middleman between BJA and other agencies without the authority that they might have if they were not kind of in this in-between role. This educational burden that you mentioned earlier, where there are agencies that maybe don't know what they need to do to report or why they need to report. So these are all common challenges that the states are facing. So hopefully that gives folks kind of a sense of what we were getting in those focus groups. As I'll mention, we'll have links later to where you can see a more detailed picture of what that information is. But in general, it kind of follows those four themes and lays out kind of more specific instances of those types of issues. But we've shared this with the discussants kind of before the meeting today, and obviously had a chance to talk a little bit about it today. So what I would like to do is get their thoughts on sort of these types of issues in their state, if there's anything that stands out to them as particularly, pressing in your state, particularly important. And then if there's anything that's missing that, we haven't talked about, if there's anything that I would like to mention as an issue that is relevant for DCRA reporting, or that creates challenges that we may want to discuss today.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start. One of the things that jumped out to me in those few slides that you just ran through, Doug, was the definitional disputes item. And at least here in Idaho, I don't think I would characterize what we've been experiencing as disputes. It's more confusion, and it's confusion around, is DCRA related to use of force reporting, for example, and what goes in which bucket, and there's obviously overlap there, but there are some things that one program covers and not the other one. And so again, coming back to the education piece, there's definitely needed to be some education there around what qualifies as a DCRA reportable incident versus use of force. And then here, the SAC is in Idaho is not involved with use of force reporting. That goes through our state UCR program. They kind of co-manage that. And so then it's a matter of, who do you report to and where do you send it, or what incident goes to what program, so there's definitely been some challenges there, but I think we've made a lot of progress on that. And yeah, I wouldn't characterize them as disputes here per se, just confusion, I think is what we've seen.
Yeah, I can kind of add to Thomas's point. I think, first of all, I think that's why it's fantastic to have an SAA-SAC relationship, because I know one of the slides, I guess I'm not used to this in Maryland because we have such a good working relationship with the reporting agencies. But if the SAA is worried about that lack of credibility, is if there's an opportunity to partner with the SACs in every state, or those, I'm sure most SACs like me were legislatively mandated to receive certain data. So because of that, we've for 15 years have managed, the traffic stop data for the state, when police use SWAT teams. So we built that credibility at the SAC that they know that we're analyzing the data because it's required by law. We're not going to misinterpret the data. We make every opportunity to understand the data before we put that analysis out there. So I think it's really important to have that SAC partnership or work with an agency that has that credibility with analyzing data, building rapport with the law enforcement and correctional agencies, and being able to analyze that data in a non-biased manner. So that's definitely a piece there, just to kind of add to what Thomas was saying. Definitely, I echo the concerns about pending investigations or data, being done quarterly. It's just very time consuming. If I had to make a recommendation, I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, Doug, so I apologize if you're talking about recommendations to improve the program. But in my mind, even, I don't know how BJA would respond to this, but putting like a 6-month lag on the reporting. So like data that would be due January 1st would be, your April 1st to June 30th incidents. That way there's like a 6-month gap. So by then, a lot of the investigations that were pending, they may have accurate causes of death and things like that, just to put like a 6-month delay on everything. So we can try to get you, up to date, information accurately without having to go back and continually updating the PMT with new updates on cases.
I think here in Kentucky, we feel very fortunate that we're not really experiencing a lot of these issues that were just outlined. And really, when it comes to challenges, what I see more than anything else is really just trying to get greater consistency and trying to clear up confusion. Like we have agencies that they know they have to report, but they don't know exactly what needs to be included. Just trying to standardize reporting forms. Again, because the Department of Corrections is receiving reports from 82 local jails. There are some agencies that, report very cleanly and everything is very succinct and easy to kind of read. And then there are places that will submit, 7 or 8 pages of handwritten memos that go along with an emergency occurrence report. So we really have been very lucky that I'm not experiencing like kind of resistance or pushback. It's really just been a challenge to kind of make people familiar. And one of the things that's really helped is now being able to refer people who aren't familiar with DCRA, and I can show them that BJA website that shows all of the different state implementation plans, that lists all of the states that have some online forum, so that they can know with confidence that this isn't, I have not, that we here in the SAC have not just cooked up some wacky thing that we want them to do for us.
Great. Thank you, everyone. This is very helpful. And interesting to see how some of their parallels with, what was done in the focus groups last year, but then also maybe some things that are different within certain states. I do want to make sure we have time to cover the kind of overcoming challenges section. So we'll go ahead and move on there to talk a bit more about some of these strategies that you may have found have helped with some of the issues you've run into with DCRA reporting. Particularly, just to start off with it, wondering if you could talk about any strategies that you think have been helpful or worthwhile that you haven't mentioned yet today to deal with some of these issues about either getting reporting agencies to report or to lower some of the barriers or improve education. Is there anything that you would want to highlight that you found to be effective that you maybe haven't mentioned yet today?
One thing for me, getting back to the communication challenges of do they need to report and what is required to report. I feel like we may go overboard sometimes, but we create a user guide, which we put on our website that really goes into detail about what's required, when it's due. So we have it on the website. We put it in the survey. We try to put out quarterly emails on all of the latest reports that are due. So we just try to do our due diligence. I think the challenge sometimes with some of these agencies is whether it's a local jail that has 30 inmates at any given time, or a local law enforcement agency that has 2 officers, they may not have had an incident that's qualified in over 10 years. So even if who are continually sending these emails out, they just have never reported because they've never had to report for a reason. So I think it's that just any ways that you can get the communication out. I know luckily in Maryland with the state bill, we actually formed a working group. So we had law enforcement in the room, we had legal representatives in the room that actually go through everything and determine what it is, and then developing relationships. If you have, correctional administrators associations or chiefs and sheriffs associations in your local state, you can kind of leverage the leadership that they have as well, just to kind of be that extra layer to kind of continue to push this communication around the reporting requirements.
Yeah, Doug, I appreciate the inclusion of lowering barriers in your setup to that question, because I think that's exactly what we're going to be focused on as we roll out this new online tool this year. My suspicion is that the way we've been doing it before has actually been discouraging agencies from submitting zero reports, because opening an email, downloading a PDF form, checking the no box, saving it in a new email and sending it back to us. Even that seems like a lot of steps to go through to say, no, I have had nothing to report this quarter. So we're trying to build that into the new online form where, similar to what Maryland has done, we're going to try to automate through that system those reminder emails. And the goal is to have a link in that email to just click on the link and say, no, I have had nothing to report this quarter, and then they would be done with it. So we're hoping that that'll lower the barrier to reporting for those agencies, like Jeffrey was talking about, like maybe the entire time that we've been collecting DCRA data from them, they haven't had a single reportable incident. And so, in their mind, it seems reasonable to say, like, why would I continue to send the same thing in quarter after quarter after quarter when I have nothing to give you? That's the hope anyway. That if we check back in again in a year, maybe I'll have something to say about how that went. But that's at least what we're shooting for.
Well, if there's nothing else for that question, I think we can move on then to our last question, which is just, if you had more resources, is there anything that you would do to improve DCRA data collection that you're not doing now? So, if you could get the funding or if you could hire the staff, what sorts of things could you do or would you want to do with additional resources?
From my perspective, it would be kind of, and it wouldn't have to be a full-time position, but somebody to almost monitor, try to be like a real-time monitor rather than scrambling at the end of the quarter to try to get all of the data. It would be someone that's actively monitoring, like that's their sole focus, is to look for incidents that may have just happened, whether that's looking at the jails for deaths, or if there's a police involved shooting that just comes up, to really be ahead of it, to make sure that it meets the definition. So we kind of get ahead of the game for that, so that the reporting is 100% correct by the time that, it's due at the end of the quarter.
I think for us, it's very easy. A couple of things that if we had the resources or funding would be to work with the Department of Corrections to standardize their report forms, and also give them, because we've got a lot of rural areas, we have places that have very spotty connection to technology, to be able to standardize report forms that could be submitted as paper forms or electronically, coming up with some type of notification system to routinely obtain autopsy results when those are available, and then finally to have a dedicated DCRA page on the SAC website, and have some type of data dashboard, so people could actually see the value of the data that we're collecting.
Yeah, My answer would echo pretty much what Jeffrey and Joe just said. I think continuing the education and outreach to not just to both get our participation rates up and to continue to improve data quality is a big thing. And then Joe, your point about making more of the data publicly available is something that resonates with me too. Over the last year or so, my office has had a handful of fairly intensive public records requests for DCRA data that I think we maybe could have headed off if we had some more data publicly available. And so that's something that I hope to look at in the near future. And tie that into the new online reporting system. So that's something we'll be exploring. Whether we need more resources or not, I guess we will see pretty soon here whether that's the case.
I can certainly, I know we've had a data dashboard that's kind of evolved over the last 3 years, and the new version, we can certainly share it with you all, that kind of has our state and our federal and how they intersect. So I'm happy to share that with this group, just as a way to kind of show the value of the data and what you can do with it.
Great, thank you. And one thing I'll mention too is one thing that we've done at JIRN is create a list of DCRA dashboards. So we have a list and links that we can share as well if folks are interested, just to see examples of, places where that data is being presented. All right. Well, unless anyone has anything else related to that question or any other thoughts on anything we've discussed today, I think we're nearing the end of our time, and so can go ahead and start to wrap up our discussion. I did, before we close today, want to point everybody to some resources that are available. So you could scan those QR codes and get either resources targeted primarily towards statistical analysis centers there on the left, or resources related to DCRA on the right. You'll also see 2 email contacts there, Jason Trask at JIRN for SAC-related questions, and then our DCRA TTA Center email address there. So if you have any questions about anything that's been talked about today, or if you want to get more information about anything, by all means, use those QR codes or those email addresses, and be happy to help connect you with whatever we can. But thanks so much to our discussants today. If you have questions for them, feel free to send them by email or by chat. I'll stay on, obviously, for the rest of our time here. But thanks to everyone for participating. I think this has been a great session, and I'm grateful for all the work that you're doing to help with this very important task of getting this data collected and transmitted so that ultimately can be used.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Doug.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to thank our discussants. This was a very informative conversation. We appreciate you taking the time to share your experiences with everyone.